Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we are going to take a look at the Virgo lunar eclipse that's taking place on the 14th of March of 2025. So the way we'll do this is taking a high-level view of this, and then we'll look at some public figures, countries that are implicated by this eclipse, and then we'll go through some slides that have some more specific information on it, as well as information about how we should all try our best to handle the energy for ourselves. And then we'll go through sign by sign and see a little bit more what we can all expect from this eclipse. Before we dive into it, I do just want to mention that the Chart Your Destiny giveaway is still going on. So if you would like to be entered to win a free personal reading with me, all you have to do is make sure that you're subscribed. Hit the like button and leave a comment with the place in which you are located or where you're from. And as I say, Earth is specific enough if you don't want to give any sort of details. And then you will be entered to win, and I will announce the winner of that giveaway on May 1st of this year. Additionally, there's information in the description box about joining memberships if you are interested in any further content. But without any further ado, let's get into this. So one of the most important things for us to take note of is that this is a lunar eclipse and it is taking place on the south node. It is a total eclipse. So basically when we look at that, we're getting full moon themes. We're also getting south node themes. And one thing that I kind of like about that is that they reflect each other quite a bit. So it's more straightforward than, say, if this were in a different season. And we'll get some flips in Virgo season when we get there, but we'll deal with that when we come to it. So the South Node, or K2, the dragon's tail, speaks to us about comfort zones, but also what is necessary for us to release, what has already served its purpose, what we can let go of due to the fact that we're not necessarily getting a lot of benefit from it anymore. So the biggest overarching theme that we're dealing with here is release. If we were talking about an eclipse, especially a solar eclipse that is on the north node, we would be talking about themes of something that we desperately want, something that we really feel that we need to align to, something that we need to reach for, something that we are bringing in, possibly even compulsively at times. So that's why it's quite important for us to be quite specific about what type of an eclipse it is that we're dealing with. This one is all about release. And we'll go into that more really throughout this entire video. But what I like about this eclipse is that we're getting a lot of help with this release. So what is a release? What do any eclipses ultimately speak to is change. And what we have with this eclipse is that the moon, which is of course opposite to the sun because we have a full moon here, both of these two, the next aspect that they're making will be a flowing aspect to Uranus here, the moon making a trine to Uranus. And that's very supportive. And if we want to look at that even more broadly, really all of these blue lines out to Uranus here, the sextiles from these placements in Pisces, the trine from the south node, and the moon here, all of these are applying across the board. Everything's applying to each other. So Uranus is applying that sextile to Neptune, the Sun and Saturn applying it to Uranus. The north node and Uranus are mutually applying. They're both moving toward that aspect together. Same goes for the south node, and then the moon is, of course, applying that trine. So we're coming up to something, and we can feel this. And so I think it's going to be really important for us throughout this period of time to look at Uranus as a beneficial, supportive planet in this mix, because it's not causing any trouble. It's actually really, really trying to help us through this. It is standing out to me that we have the lunar eclipse in the sign of Venus's fall, and then we have the Uranus here in the sign of Venus's rulership, her domicile in Taurus. And then we have all of these other placements, Saturn, the Sun, the North Node, and Neptune, all in the sign of Venus's exaltation, while Venus herself is in detriment, but moving back toward that place of exaltation there. We're going to talk a little bit more about Venus in a moment, but there's something about our values. There's something about our comfort and our pleasures that's calling out here. There's a need here for all of us to look at what it is that we're taking a little bit too seriously, what it is that we're getting a little bit too detailed about, that maybe we're pushing for productivity along the lines of too much, to the detriment of our own enjoyment of our lives, because that ultimately is truly why we're here, regardless of whether the social structures around us allow us to engage in that as often as we would like. And I'll just give you a personal example. This is probably one of the most important eclipses in my lifetime personally. I was born between eclipses, but this one's taking place on my solar return. My solar return is like a couple hours maybe after this. It's actually exactly when the sun makes the sextile to Uranus, because my sun is at 24 degrees in 2 minutes. So this one's likely to be very significant, and I've been side-eyeing it quite a bit. And it's taking place in my 10th house and my 4th, with the moon in my 4th. And so basically, I'm definitely being told here to chill. And I am such a perfectionist, and I really am not a big downtime person. I'm not a big fan of just letting things be and not trying to push things forward a lot, especially working for myself now, where I do feel the need sometimes to crack the whip on myself. So with that Uranus in my 12th house, I've been getting like kind of sick lately and not feeling super well. Like this video was supposed to come out on Friday because I was pushing, I was like, hey, got to keep up the momentum and everything. And yeah, exactly a week before, which is usually when it starts to kick in if it's a weirdly personal eclipse for you, my hand starts to get forced about slowing it down from that 12th house, from the house of you're going to run into difficulties, you're going to run into physical burnout, even if you try and push yourself beyond any enjoyment level, potential burnout. So slowing it down, trying to slow down the pace, not to be unproductive, but to just look at the whole situation a lot differently in order to make it more sustainable. And that's ultimately what Uranus is trying to point out to us, is that there's a way to make something more sustainable that has become a bit too heavy and too serious and not quite lighthearted enough, not quite idealistic enough with all of this that's going on in Pisces. This area has been pretty heavy, but it's actually offering a different way of looking at things than the moon is right now. And by separating the emotional density that we're experiencing throughout this whole Pisces season from the practical, productive concerns of constantly needing to push, we're able to get a different perspective on that. And Uranus is helping immensely along those lines. So if we look at it this way, the Earth is getting right in between these two, blocking out the emotional density that we've been experiencing recently from our practical, productive concerns. One of the ways this would most likely come about would be something along the lines of anxiety. And, well, what if I drop the ball? What if I don't push along whatever lines in my life, whether it be a relationship that you're trying to work on or a project, if you're trying to get a promotion at work, if you're trying to push through a creative block and force the issue. The Earth is really getting in the way of that. Humanity needs to be humanity. It can't just stay on this kind of hamster wheel. And so Uranus is bringing us a message in Taurus of the liberatory nature of comforts and pleasure and just taking it easy, relaxing, knowing what it is that we enjoy, not feeling the need to constantly improve upon things the way that the mutable signs are endlessly trying to do. Settling into those comforts and coming back to an authentic feeling of who it is that you are that's steady, that's based on what your pleasures are. It's not based on a title. It's not even based on an image of yourself or who it is that you want to be. It's just who you are deep down, comfortably, calmly, in your own skin, in your own home, not feeling guilty for it. This is something that Taurus is able to do quite a bit, and Uranus is bringing that message to us. So clearly a lot of us are in need of this kind of a thing right now. And of course, I'll take it through the signs and we can see a bit more of what this is saying for each of us, but all of us on a level are dealing with that right now. Too much stress. I would also highly recommend heeding this message because of the fact that this full moon eclipse is going to take place in Virgo. If we don't listen to Uranus here, we could start to see some negative health impacts the way that I did this week. So I really can't recommend it enough. Throughout the coming couple of weeks or so, slow it down to a steady pace that is much less than what you would ordinarily feel like you should do. And likely what that's going to be presenting to you is the fact that even beyond the time period of this lunar eclipse, we probably don't need to push so hard that we're spinning our wheels all the time anyway. So if we really take in these messages from this eclipse, it's likely that we're going to have a much better idea about sustainability. Now, I want to take a moment to focus in on this area because it does stand out a lot. All of this is opposing that moon. So all of this, to an extent, is arguing with this moon, and the Earth is getting right between that. So we need to keep that in mind. And what's actually happening here? Well, we have the sun getting right in the middle of what has been an ongoing loose conjunction between Saturn and Neptune that started building up last year and will perfect next February. So in about a year from now, it'll perfect at 0 degrees of Aries. I've been talking about these two for a little while and what it is that they're doing. I'm going to do a video specifically about that, but suffice it to say that there's a lot of structures, there's a lot of systems of doing things, especially systems of like institutional management, narrative management, ideas about hierarchies, ideas about good and bad, right and wrong, the stories that we tell ourselves about our lives and our world, that are coming under a huge amount of pressure. And they're going to be continually undergoing a lot of change for the coming year plus. There are likely at least some major surface fractures in some institutions that maybe we've been able to overlook, whether it be our places of work, whether it be our relationships. And I definitely feel for you if that's the case. Even in our image of ourselves, what it is that we're here to do, our purpose, whether or not we're enjoying the path that we have thus far chosen to take, especially with the North Node in the mix there as well. The sun's coming into that area. It's showing those cracks. It's really bringing that to light. And there are such themes right now throughout this month and into, I would say, at least mid-late April or so. So many messages about visibility and invisibility. And it makes a lot of sense then that we're also dealing with a bunch of eclipses. We have so many different planets that are, quote, under the beams, and so we can't see them. When Saturn is only 1 degree from the sun, it's impossible for us to see it. But we had Mercury and Venus come out before the sun, and they were not visible, and then they're both going to do retrograde cycles, and they're going to come back and not be visible again because of the sun being too bright, them being out during the day, more or less. Then, of course, we have the eclipses. Neptune can also obscure our vision of things while making the true nature of matters weirdly understandable, but without any evidence. And so one of my concerns about this lunar eclipse is that for some people, it may go unheeded due to how much is going on and how much we need to tap in order to understand what's going on here and what the message is. Now, as I say, with the sun in the middle of this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, the sun is moving off of Saturn now. That was the previous aspect that it made before the full moon. And now it's doing the applying sextile to Uranus. And so the sequence of this is that the sun has just taken a really good look at Saturn there and recognizes probably some of the cracks, some of the fractures that need to be worked through. And then right on the heels of that is actively seeking out change by applying that sextile to Uranus, and it's receiving support there. So there's a huge amount of opportunity that I definitely want to emphasize here to address the matters that seem to be going a bit sideways, that seem to be requiring so much extra effort, that seem to be giving us anxiety, that seem to be demanding a lot of energy from us. Another complication here is that Jupiter is not aspected. So it may look here like it is. Venus went up to about 9 degrees and then it went retrograde. And so it was about to apply this sextile and then it turned back before it could complete. With Mercury, the day after this eclipse, it will go retrograde as well. And so it's turning around at the same point and not completing the sextile to Jupiter. So technically nothing will be completing any aspects to Jupiter that have already started, which is to say that Jupiter's not heavily involved in the picture here. That gives me a bit of pause because, for one thing, I feel like Uranus is playing the part of what we would expect from Jupiter in this picture. It seems to be offering a lot of the solutions and a lot of support and comfort, which is not something that we typically expect from Uranus. But then again, we're usually avoiding change, whereas I think that a lot of us are actually going to somewhat naturally embrace change with this eclipse. And Uranus is more than happy to offer that. But Jupiter is usually the big helper that we're able to rely on. And it's not really tied in here. So we're going to have to make some of these changes without the big picture, without seeing and understanding the big picture completely yet. Another major thing that we need to keep in mind is that Mercury, which is about to go retrograde the following day on the 15th of March, is the ruler of this eclipse. And so I've been emphasizing, try not to make decisions that you can't be flexible within right around the day of the eclipse, because it looks to me like there's going to be a lot of decisions made where immediately afterward there's some regrets or wishing that one could go back. And if you want to avoid some fallout, the decisions that I would recommend making around change, one thing that's great about Uranus as well is that it's not just looking to upend things willy-nilly. What it's actually seeking out is more room to move, to feel emancipated, to feel liberated. And one of the ways that we can try to bring that more into our lives is to create situations and circumstances around us that are more flexible than otherwise. And so if you want to make a big decision around this time, try to emphasize flexibility within whatever it is that you're choosing. If there's a more or a less flexible option, the indications here would be strongly toward flexibility, because there's something here about not having all the information, not having the complete big picture that we're working with. So in terms of visibility, this eclipse is going to be total over virtually all of North America, which is a bit of a trip. It's running right down the middle. And it'll be taking place right around 2:55 on the East Coast in the morning on the 14th, which is to say that when we are wrapping it up to go to bed on the 13th, it's shortly after that. So that's something important to keep in mind. We're not waiting until the 14th to plan for this one, it's on the night in between the 13th and the 14th. This also does mean that a lot of the activity of this eclipse is likely to be seen in North America. And so we could see some structures seem to disintegrate a bit due to unsustainability and internal contradictions with reality. And I could see this happening with less effort than one would possibly expect of something coming apart or being exposed as unsustainable. So there is a reality that winds up arising with this eclipse that's impacting North America most especially this time. And a major need here by our societies in our countries, from Canada to Mexico and even over the nations of Central America, to sacrifice some illusions. And we could see some surprising disappearances or obscurations, absences, as well as a general sense of loss of interest or feeling lost. With Mercury and Venus fading from visibility around the time of this eclipse, it signals the beginning of a phase where their energies become more internalized and ethereal. So this shift suggests a deeper exploration of underlying themes, motivations, and the reassessment of fluctuating circumstances. Mercury, while losing some of its strength in Pisces, since Mercury is in its fall and its detriment when it's in Pisces, it's going to struggle to grasp complex matters and express itself clearly. And like I said, it may also lack awareness of its own position, leading to decisions that will require significant revision after the fact. So understanding that we don't have the full picture here and trying to make decisions that offer us greater flexibility. Now, Venus is also moving back into Pisces, and it will gain power in Pisces since it exalts there. However, it's going to remain under the beams, and it'll be, of course, retrograde. So it's going to be navigating situations that are beyond its control, even though it's navigating situations with which it naturally identifies. So we may be pretty clear about what our values are, and yet not understand how it is that we are able to utilize those, how it is that we're able to apply those to situations that are beyond our control right now. And of course, with Saturn and Neptune in the mix, with Venus and Mercury also speaking to these and this conjunction, narratives about the world and current events will begin to unravel during this time, and efforts to reconstruct them will face ongoing challenges. This is because the reality of the situation has fundamentally shifted, creating an unfamiliar landscape that demands new answers, reasoning, and perspectives. So that's what Uranus is trying to offer here to all parties involved. When I say all of these sextiles are applying, even Venus and Mercury will be applying sextiles to that Uranus very soon as well, once they get back into Pisces. So the reality of the situation has fundamentally shifted, and that's why we don't have the big picture here. So since this is going to demand new answers, new reasoning, new perspectives, enabling us just during this time being for these few weeks to have as much flexibility as possible is going to be the best way to go with that. Trying not to make grand statements or declare things with certainty when we don't understand the full picture of what's going on right now. With the eclipse in Virgo, discerning facts and details will prove particularly difficult as well. So those who approach this time with contemplation and observation are likely to gain a better understanding of the unfolding changes compared to those who attempt to impose their will or claim to have all of the answers. And in fact, such overconfidence could lead to pretty dramatic consequences with this whole mix that we have here, even to the extent of a fall from grace. So expect this period to be emotionally charged. We have a lot of that Pisces energy, a lot of very dense and broad-based emotional energy that we're working through. And then in addition to that, this time is likely to be marked by heightened anxiety, confusion, frustration, and irritability. So this is why I'm saying just try and stay as flexible as possible. It's also important to recognize that this is a time of significant shifts, misdirections, and redirections, many of which are unlikely to hold. This is another thing that I've been trying to emphasize recently, is that one of the reasons why I'm suggesting to try and release some of the anxiety is that a lot of what we're stressed about in the world right now, it's not actually going to hold in this way. And so getting anxious now about things, getting anxious tomorrow about things, getting anxious the next day, a week from now, a month from now, about all of these different changes, a lot of which are not going to hold. Again, that is flying in the face of the sustainability problem that this lunar eclipse is bringing up, and the flexibility that Uranus is offering as a solution to this. So try to avoid becoming overwhelmed by every single change and each day of, say, the news cycle and how we're emotionally feeling and reacting, especially economically. The markets, I'm sure, are going to be up and down quite a bit based on the emotional barometer with which people are tied into at any given time. So yeah, avoid becoming overwhelmed by every change and instead focus on adapting as needed, and know that you will be able to adapt as needed. That's one of the omens here, is that, hey, we can always shift and adjust to certain things as necessary with those flowing aspects to Uranus. So resist the urge to, some of these shifts may prove meaningful over time while others are going to fade. So resist the urge to act impulsively or engage in fight or flight responses during this time. And the strong involvement of Uranus and Neptune in this eclipse as well are also reflecting the relatively profound tidal shifts that we're experiencing. I could absolutely see this eclipse being one of the ones where we don't fully recognize the significance of it until after the fact. Now, I also quickly want to point out some of what I've noticed with this specific eclipse in terms of public figures, countries, and things like this. This is not an exhaustive list, and if you have more examples to offer, definitely feel free to put them in the comments. So this eclipse is taking place on the moon of Lebanon. It's taking place on the Pluto of Elon Musk, which makes me wonder if there's an extent of decreasing relevance there. That might be wishful thinking, but that's on the South Node full moon side. And is Pluto speaking to his power? There's something interesting there. I certainly don't mind that. The moon is on the midheaven of Benjamin Netanyahu. It's on the Mars of Ukraine, and it is on the Neptune of the United States. Now, Uranus here is on the midheaven of both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, so they could totally be affecting some of the attending changes that we're seeing in the world. So let's look at some of these notes of mine together here. So reality arising, sacrificing illusions. I fully expect that in the coming few months or so, there's going to be a huge amount of information and details around stories that we've been told, that we believe, that we're finding out are just flatly not true, that we were deceived. Certainly this could come out pretty sharply around the eclipse, but I think that this is going to be going on for several months here, especially as we build up to the exact conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. But that information coming out could absolutely lead to the downfall of figures or institutions that relied on maintaining those illusions, and that gained a sense of legitimacy from that. Also, with eclipses, we can see the end of certain eras, the fall of prominent figures, and new leaders emerging. And yeah, like I said, the significance of these changes is not likely to be immediately apparent. So one example would be someone making an impassioned speech about a policy that they're not in favor of, and therefore being noticed, but maybe in a couple of years, then they're going to run for office, and their reputation was built from and started with that big speech that maybe they're making around this time. There's also a major tidal pull here. So a sense of being drawn into major inevitable shifts, as well as feeling a strange sense of a loss of interest in something that previously seemed convincing or significant or important or correct, and feeling out of sync with that, and no longer feeling the motivation to put energy into that. But again, that can bring up a feeling of being lost or disoriented while navigating those changes. So be totally okay with the fact right now that you don't have all the answers about things. That's where we're supposed to be at. And it's those of us who are able to sit in that and understand that are likely to reach a sense of greater connection to reality, especially next year with that conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, than those who try and grasp onto, no, I'm right. No, I have the correct information, and this is bad and this is good, and so on and so forth. Because a lot of our imagination of these things, a lot of these things that we hold on to, have really been informed by not the most reliable of actors, especially when it comes to media outlets and things like this. Saturn-Neptune conjunction, the dissolution of old structures and emergence of new realities, potential failure of existing systems to adapt to changing circumstances. There can also be a sudden shift in the relevance of something, where something that seemed extraordinarily relevant, especially like on the world stage, is suddenly no longer relevant whatsoever. So expect those huge swings in this coming year, and kicking it off with this eclipse that's getting super involved in that conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. Now, we could see some structural collapses around this period of time too, whether it be systems or even physical structures and things like this. Again, this is going to be due to contradictions internally or unsustainability. And mismanagement is definitely going to come through pretty sharply here too. Another thing that I'm picking up on from this eclipse is, of course, the light of the sun is blotted out by the Earth from the moon. And when we look at mundane astrology, the sun tends to indicate leadership, while the moon tends to indicate the people. So there could be a lot of action taking, very karmic in nature, and probably about to blow back with that Saturn-Neptune conjunction coming up, where regular people and workers are not taken into consideration. I think that's one of the worst things that a leader could choose to do around this time, because again, I really don't see that going over well, even within the coming year and a half or so. And especially given the moon and its trine to Uranus, there could definitely be some surprising moves made by regular people, organizing, by workers, shifting the power dynamics in a way that wasn't expected by leadership. So we could for sure see some big movements, protests, things like this arising out of this lunar eclipse as well. Again, Mercury and Venus are going to be under the beams, so communication and values becoming more introspective. And the fact that we're unable to paint the big picture because we can't see the big picture, I think is going to be very frustrating for a lot of people, especially since these grand narratives have been painted for us and kind of fed to us for so many years that pretty much whatever side you're on, the media that you consume has constantly been telling you that you're right. And there's just going to be too much contradiction to where the level of cognitive dissonance that I think a lot of us are going to be faced with around certain things that we've been relying on is just going to be too much to be able to hold on to. And that's going to be confusing and frustrating. But ultimately, this is bringing us to a shift in priorities. And I think it's also going to be encouraging us to mind our own affairs. not just individually, but possibly within our own borders. Tidal shifts. The planets involved here in a very strong way, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, indicating sudden, unexpected changing, dissolving of boundaries. That's going to be a huge, huge thing. So we'll be feeling this as well in the ether, which can be a bit stressful, but also, again, pretty liberating, because maybe for a lot of us, there's been an awareness that there are changes that need to be made. And so this can be, on a level, welcome to a lot of people. One thing I would be wary of is limited hangouts. And this is a term that we use for like controlled release of information, where it appears that someone or something has either been exposed or that someone is coming clean about something. But this is done in a controlled kind of a way where even what is exposed is not the complete story. It's not the total story. So again, we don't have the full picture. Even if there is a seemingly huge expose of information coming out, I would not expect for it to include everything during this specific period of time, because there's so much obscuration going on. And the sun is still right in the mix of that, which is to say that there is still the heavy hand of leadership in the whole mix of what we're dealing with here. So on a personal level, avoiding fight or flight, finding a space of observation, I think, is going to be especially important. And even if you just want to tune out and you don't even want to observe, I think that that's probably a lot better than trying to be actively engaging with the push and pull that we see going on in the world right now. There will be time for that later. But for now, contemplation over action. Reflecting on your own values, reflecting on your own priorities and your own ideas about solutions to matters in your own life or the lives of those around you, I think is going to be a really wonderful way to spend this, and to help you understand then the underlying dynamics that we're experiencing during this period of time. Yeah, avoid getting too attached to any single outcome or narrative. We're being encouraged to build up our emotional resilience here, being really flexible, trying to be less anxious about changes that are occurring, focusing again on what we can control, which is us and what's going on in our communities. And when it comes to those around you, when it comes to possibly even social media, things like this, I would highly recommend avoiding getting drawn into unnecessary conflicts or reactive behaviors, especially because of the fact that the ruler of this eclipse, Mercury, is about to go retrograde the day after this eclipse takes place. So ultimately, a period of profound transformation and reevaluation, where old structures are giving way to new realities, both on a personal and collective level, even on a global level. So try and stay grounded, observant, especially of just that which is going on in the immediate environment, adaptable. That's the best way for people and for organizations and institutions to navigate this period of time, and to get to the other side of it without having created a huge and unsustainable mess for oneself or for the organization. So finally, for all of us on a personal level, before we get into the sign by sign, this lunar eclipse in Virgo is marking a significant turning point in our lives, especially as it initiates a new series of eclipses along the Pisces-Virgo axis. We've gotten one eclipse, a lunar eclipse last year in Pisces, but this is our first Virgo eclipse. The moon in Virgo is emphasizing themes of release, letting go, purging outdated habits, systems, or thought patterns, while the sun in Pisces is encouraging us to embrace intuition, compassion, spiritual growth, our personal values. And with flowing aspects to Uranus in Taurus, this eclipse is bringing unexpected breakthroughs for us, liberation, opportunities for grounding innovation about the way that we do things into practical reality, making those practical changes for us. So this eclipse series that we're going to be experiencing in the coming couple of years in Pisces and Virgo, it's going to continue to bring themes of release and renewal, encouraging us to balance practicality with spirituality, service with self-care, give with take, analysis with intuition. There's going to be a lot about our personal boundaries and the efforts that we put into things that we consider really near and dear to us. With Uranus in the mix, definitely expect the unexpected, as always, but trust with these flowing aspects that these changes that are going on right now are leading to greater alignment and liberation. So even if some of the changes that arise for you are, like for me, getting sick and having my hand forced about chilling out, slowing down the pace, recognize that these things are trying to help us and they will force our hand if necessary, but the changes are for the sake of a sense of liberation. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive into the sign by sign. So for Aries rising, this eclipse is activating your 6th house and your 12th house, and it's questioning your 6th house to an extent. So it's asking you whether your working habits, your routines are healthy for you, if they are serving you, or if they are bringing you complications, difficulties that you're facing. Are you being too hard on yourself? Are you pushing yourself too hard to the point that you may even be impacting your health with that? Being as flexible as possible along these lines is going to serve you super well. So trying to be compassionate with yourself, trying to be very aware of what your limits are and respecting that, not pushing yourself beyond that. And that's going to be different from day to day. So working along the lines of intuition on this, I think, is going to serve you really well. You may have an experience that arises around this time that causes you to recognize this. So there could be an increase in the tasks that you're required to do in your workload. You could find that people are leaving your workplace, for instance, and somehow that's putting more on your plate. And you may need to speak up about what it is that you're able to take care of. Do you need to make it clear that when you're at home, you can't be focused on work all the time? Or is there perhaps a part of your working life, a part of your routine that you're able to infuse with something a lot more lighthearted, a lot more creative? Is there a way that you're able to be more flexible in a certain area of your life? One thing that's coming to mind for me is there are a lot of ways that we can utilize AI programs even now to handle some of our tasks. So is there a part of your work that you're able to outsource to that kind of a thing while you're still checking in on it? And are you able to redefine to yourself what it is that motivates you to work? So are you able to define to yourself how it is that what it is that you do in your day-to-day life reinforces your values? Uranus is helping you with this coming from your 2nd house. So there may be some finances that you have that you're able to utilize to this end. Perhaps if you're able to adjust some of your expenses, if you're able to take some PTO, take a vacation, that could be one of the ways that Uranus is calling on you to be a little bit more flexible with yourself and to recognize your limits and to not be too perfectionistic about constantly being productive. Another way that it could be helping is along the lines of your values, and either through your intuition or a realization or even events around you, what your values are when it comes to your work, and even new perspectives on your self-worth, so that Perhaps you're not backburnering your own interests and your own values for the sake of productivity. Even if this isn't specifically in the context of your employment, this can be that you need to define some boundaries with those around you about the level of effort and energy that they are demanding from you. Maybe you need to take some time to yourself, to recharge your batteries, to reconnect with yourself, with your spirit. And perhaps it's been a little while since you've done that. Perhaps it's even been a little while since you have communicated your boundaries to other people. And if it seems like that would be helpful around this time, you may find that by doing so, you're kind of exercising that muscle again so that you're able to use it more going forward in a way that liberates you to an extent from overgiving. So I would highly recommend being as flexible and unrigid with yourself as you possibly can around your routine. So if you feel like you're slipping with that, like your footing is slipping when it comes to your routine, try not to be hard on yourself. What this is actually asking you to do is take some time out, reconsider it. What are the parts of it that seem to drag? What are the parts of it that seem really unfulfilling and not aligned with you? And can you change those? If you can't change them completely, because obviously there are certain working systems and things like this that we don't have total control over, is there a way that you're able to infuse some flexibility along those lines? So for instance, are you able to, if this is an employment thing where you have a little bit less of a say, are you able to listen to some music? Are you able to listen to some podcasts during maybe more boring parts of your working life? Are you able to eat your lunch in a different context so that you're not constantly being bombarded maybe during lunchtime with the drama of certain workplace employees that aren't respecting your boundaries, or that you might not even be fully comfortable expressing your boundaries to? Are you able to establish those through other means? There's something really important here about making sure that your money is working for you and that you're utilizing your financial footing in order to free yourself up as much as possible. Uranus in your second is wrapping up for one thing, but it is offering this suggestion and this opportunity right now about the fact that maybe you're looking at money a little bit too much as a necessity, that you need to put a bunch of productivity into making as much of it as possible and then spending as little of it as possible, or spending it in this kind of stopgap way that doesn't actually serve to make you feel freed up long term or broadly, but is rather than maybe utilized to cope with the fallout of doing too much. So how can you best make your money, make your security, the resources that you have available to you, offer you greater flexibility in your day-to-day life so that you're able to feel a lot more connected to yourself internally? One last thing that I would recommend, this is going to be a bit of a side message, but Mercury is ruling this eclipse, right? And it's in your first house, and it's about to go retrograde the next day. So if you're feeling super stressed with your routine, one of the things that could cause this to be a kind of fallout situation for you, so one thing to avoid, would be if you're very stressed and you wind up speaking strongly and harshly and then regret it and then feel the need to become kind of verbally internalized, or where you're feeling kind of embarrassed about something that you said out of stress. So that's one thing I would really pay attention to around this time, is the words that you're using, making sure that they are, one, empowering to you, but also not leading to any sort of potential fallout from saying the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Aries rising. Try and be as flexible with yourself as you possibly can in your day-to-day life. Don't be hard on yourself. Keep an eye on your health and energy vitality levels. That's likely to be pretty low around this time. So give yourself all of that extra space that you possibly can around this time to get some rest, to take some time out, to not deal with drama. And I think that that's going to serve you super well around this period of time. So yeah, that is what I have for you, Aries rising. So for Taurus rising, this eclipse is activating your 5th house and your 11th house. So it's bringing up for review questions around whether or not you're really having fun with certain things, especially when it comes to your social life and your creative life. So if you feel, for instance, that you've been in a bit of a rut, this can definitely be calling for spontaneity, especially in self-expression, doing things just for the sake of your own enjoyment, rather than trying to be productive along the lines of your creativity and your self-expression. Try not to put yourself too much into a box here. And for instance, if you are a creative type, there's messages here about allowing yourself to be authentic, not perfect. We're not aiming for perfect here, is the big screaming message, basically. When it comes to your friendships, your romantic partners, checking in and making sure, again, is this something that you're enjoying? Is it something that you feel fulfilled in? Or do you feel like you're going through the motions with some people? Perhaps even you feel like you haven't been as social recently. I know there's still quite a few people who are struggling with this out of COVID, of not having the social life that once was, or at the very least, not enjoying it quite as much. Especially if you feel like you've been working a lot, you've been trying to be super productive and channel your creative energy into your working life. This can be a major wake-up call around that, of encouraging you to focus on enjoying your life. That's ultimately what we're here to do. So are you physically inhibiting your enjoyment in the sense of putting so much energy into productivity that you don't feel like you have enough afterward for hobbies, interests, activities, things like this, socializing, romantic partners, your children even? Or are the inhibitions that you feel imposed in a way of feeling like if you were truly authentic, then perhaps something as disheartening even as maybe people wouldn't like you, or maybe your prospects would not be as good, or maybe you have struggled with perfectionism and constantly needing to hit a really high mark because you know that you're capable, but we can't always do that all the time. So reminding yourself that, I don't even want to say like as long as you're doing your best, because you don't need to constantly be doing your best even. Just being you, just doing what it is that feels right in a given moment in time is valuable. And that's really what, makes life worth living, and also makes it sustainable. That's one thing we're going to be seeing a lot with this lunar eclipse, is these questions of sustainability, especially of the effort and, again, perfectionism that we put upon things. So how is life even really sustainable if you're not enjoying it anymore? Maybe there's even a creative hobby or interest or something like that, that the fact that maybe you're not enjoying it quite as much as you used to might be a sign that you don't need to do it. If you're not into it, you don't need to do it. And maybe there's something else that you would rather be doing. And there's no shame in changing gears and doing something completely different. Sometimes that is really what our life needs in order to get that spark back. So yeah, really tapping into these more lighthearted energies, your dreams, your goals. When you allow yourself to go big in your mind about what would be just brilliantly ideal for you, what you would truly, truly enjoy when you take all of the inhibitions away, when you peel that all away. Look at that, consider it. Are there any steps that you can take to that end? It doesn't have to be all at once, but if you're able to move in that direction and you're motivated to move into that direction, which I think you absolutely will be with this super important for you right now, Uranus and Taurus in your first house. That's all about your own personal authenticity. It's also about liberating yourself, freeing yourself up. And it's not going to do super well if you don't feel that way. That's when Uranus can start to step in and start overturning tables and throwing a fit because it feels too constrained. Is there a way that you can connect with your community either more if you feel like you haven't been enough or more enjoyably? Are there any maybe festivals around or little events, things like this? Maybe check like a community calendar if you haven't in a while and just see what might spark your interest. Going to the lake, going to a park, going out for coffee, doing your work outside might even be something that lightens up your energy with this kind of an alignment as well. And maybe there are people who share your values, either spiritually or socially, that you're able to connect to and kind of reinvigorated with as well. But yeah, ultimately, this is really trying to lighten you up. It's trying to, if you have any sort of a shell that you dwell in, to get you out of that shell, to shake you out of any sort of rut that you may be in, any inhibitions that you may have, any issues that you may have with regard to groups of feeling not enough or anything along those lines. It's trying to shake those off and activate as strongly as it possibly can the end here of Uranus in your first house, because this Uranus is about to move on. It will move into Gemini in July of this year. It'll come back for one more stint of, I think it's about 6 months, maybe a little bit longer at the end of this year and beginning of next year, but then it's moved on. So those last lessons of Uranus in your first house, which is really just trying to throw the shackles completely off of you wherever they may arise. And the fact that this eclipse is so tied into that Uranus, it's hyper activated right now, and absolutely feel free to utilize it. Be super spontaneous. Do what it is that you want. Appear how it is that you want. That's the big lesson here for you, Taurus rising. And yeah, if you feel like things around you have gotten a little bit more dense, so where it's not like you feel like your spirits are super densed up or serious or anything, but that you just don't feel like you know of an outlet around you, I would totally seek it out around this time. Some place where you can feel like you're not responsible for the concerns of others, because we can't always be in that space. And you've recently probably dealt with a lot of people who needed help, a lot of people that you felt somehow responsible for. And that's wrapping up, but it is wrapping up just before Uranus moves on too. So really calling that into question while you're still dealing with these energies, I think is going to serve you really well to get the most juice out of these transits before they wind up moving on. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Taurus rising. Okay, so for my fellow Gemini rising peeps, this eclipse is activating your 4th house of home and family, your roots, your core, as well as your 10th house of reputation, legacy, profession, public standing. These are very important houses in your chart. So you're coming up, like your life is coming up for a lot of pretty huge shifts in the coming couple of years as we have these eclipses going back between Virgo and Pisces. And the way that you can think about this axis is like you at your core, and then how it is that you like burst onto the scene, bloom out into the world and show yourself to the world. So this can definitely be impacting you along those more abstract lines. But in terms of concrete shifts that are likely to be coming up for you, really, again, for the coming couple of years, but will be starting to get the ball rolling on that with this eclipse. are changes with regard to your home and family and your career or your legacy, your private life and your public life. So you may see certain themes arise to be addressed around this period of time with your home, your living situation, your family, possible family dynamics or things along these lines, responsibilities, a sense of needing to be productive for your family, any sort of inhibitions that you may have with regard to your family, possibly feeling a bit claustrophobic where you are, like, or stir crazy, a bit of a wanderlust arising. And ultimately, this is asking you, are you happy? Are you enjoying these areas of your life, especially with regard to your home and family this time around? Though I do need to reiterate that these areas of your life, both your public life and your private life, are feeding straight into each other. So where one is getting activated, the other's going to be getting activated too in these coming couple of years. So are you happy with that? Are you satisfied with where you're at? Probably to some substantial extent or another, the answer to that is going to be a no, because that's why these eclipses are coming up, is that there's something that needs to be shaken up. There's something that needs to come up for a change. You could have a change in your relationship with a significant family member. You may feel like you are not on the same page with some of your family members around this period of time. And this might even go beyond family in terms of like where you're living, the community. Do you feel aligned with the community that's around you? Do you feel like you fit there? Do you feel like you would fit somewhere else a little bit better? And is that coming up as a kind of subconscious urge to be somewhere else? These things would all be pointing to an area in which you may need to be a bit more spontaneous. You may need to consider making some shifts and changes in order to better align this part of your life of where it is that you're living, how it is that you're living, how it is that you're seeing yourself with regard to the rest of the world, how it is that you're seeing yourself with regard to your family, how those relationships are going, how they're developing, and whether you feel like you're still aligned with that. Is that ultimately serving your good, or does it feel like it's out of sync or unsatisfying? Is it something that maybe you even avoid thinking about? So Uranus is likely to be bringing up little realizations, intuitive hits around this area of how you can be more flexible with yourself, how you can be more flexible within your family, how you can get those relationships potentially out of a rut or so that they feel less like work. So I would be paying attention for those. I'd also be writing down ideas about urges that you get, about substantial changes that you're feeling drawn to make in your life. You don't need to make those changes right now. And that is why I've been mentioning that we're getting eclipses along these lines for the coming couple of years. Usually the first one isn't the one that just changes everything. It usually plants a major seed and gets you thinking about something so that you can put the steps in to make those changes that you're feeling called to over the course of those couple of years that follow. Ultimately, what this tends to bring is that, yeah, in a couple of years, these parts of your life are dramatically different, such that sometimes it's unrecognizable. But for right now, what it is that you're working with along these lines is this Uranus in your 12th house that's helping you right now in this phase of the process and development of your family and home life and your career and public standing. There may even be questions arising around how it is that the origin narratives that you have, how it is that your conditioning during your childhood, how it is that your family relationships have served to box you in when it comes to your public life. So were there certain values imparted upon you that shaped the trajectory of your public life, maybe your career? where you're feeling caged in and unsatisfied with that now, and you're wanting to make certain changes. Are you able to address the root of that first? The trine, which I'm sorry that you can't see it here, I always have to change the time of the eclipse so that it's not actually like right around the eclipse in order to get the signs to be on these angles here so that I can show it properly. But there is, at the point of the eclipse, a trine between these two. And ultimately what that's bringing up is just so much about the psychological conditioning that you received in childhood and that you carry with you. And so you're being asked to uproot that to a great extent. And that's going to serve you really wonderfully in the coming couple of years. And ultimately what this is asking you to do is really to stay open to change, to really embrace change, because it may feel like, oh, wow, these are some really big steps that I'm taking around these parts of my life, but it is ultimately serving your good. It is ultimately very helpful. And it's getting you to feel, again, more aligned in terms of your values, how you're living, your lifestyle, and your reputation, your legacy. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Gemini rising. So for Cancer rising, this eclipse is activating your 3rd house here and your 9th house. So this is all about communication, your connections with others, your learning, study, the community around you, and expanding your horizons. So you may recently have felt a bit caged in, possibly even a bit out of sync with the environment around you, with the people, places, and things around you, with the 3rd house being much more localized, focused on the community and the things, the people around you, and the day-to-day communications that you have. There's been a lot going on in your 9th house recently, which is probably inspiring you to expand your horizons. Maybe you're wanting to travel. Maybe you're wanting to experience a different culture or a different way of doing things. Maybe you're wanting to be in connection more with people that challenge you to grow and develop and experience more of yourself. And yet maybe that seems on some level frivolous, like this Virgo 3rd house with this lunar eclipse could be pointing to feeling like you always need to be productive, and the best way to do that is to just stay coloring within the lines, to not fritter away a bunch of time on things like personal development and having fun and being spontaneous and things like this, and feeding that part of your spirit. And if that's the case, that's something that you're definitely being asked to release here, is a sense of feeling boxed in or even criticized by those around you, and embracing these more expansive, broad interests of yours, developing your mind and your spirit. Now, Uranus is helping you in the form of, one, hopes and dreams that may be arising that are new. So new interests, maybe you're interested in a country that you haven't really thought of a lot before. Maybe you're interested in a new field of study. Maybe you're interested in developing a different type of a career than you've experienced before, and maybe you would need to do some studying. It's also helping you in the way of friends and allies, colleagues, and those who support you and your development and the expansion of your horizons. So you could be like spontaneously, almost serendipitously running into people that have information that is helping you to feel like you're growing and developing in the direction that you're really desiring to. You're going to be having eclipses along the lines of these two houses here, the 3rd house and the 9th, for a couple of years now. And so I really would not be surprised if, one, you are traveling or getting around more, basically, shaking up your routine a lot more than you have been recently, or jumping into a new or additional field of study in order to, again, develop yourself further. Possibly even developing your career further. You may in recent years have felt somehow dissatisfied with the field that you were in. And that's now translating into this urge to pick up something else. Ultimately, the purpose here is to make you feel more aligned with what's around you. And if that means that what's around you needs to change in the sense of going to a different place or developing different friendships and different social circles and different types of conversations that are going on around you because you are exploring something else completely, then that's really what you're being called to do around this time. It's really to lighten your spirit and ultimately to make you feel more fulfilled in your life, your goals, your dreams. One thing I will say is expect a lot of communication around this period of time. It's likely to be pretty exciting, but it could become a little overwhelming too. So if you do need to express some boundaries with regard to communication, and for instance, how often and at what hours and how quickly you reply to texts or emails or whatnot, I wouldn't be shy about communicating about that and expressing those boundaries. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Cancer rising. So for Leo rising, this eclipse is activating your second house and your eighth house. So this is going to be having a pretty big impact on your finances. Really, over the course of the coming couple of years, there's going to be a lot of twists and turns and changes along those lines. There may have been a feeling recently of needing to be very self-reliant, needing to continually be focused on the bottom line and making sure that you are as stable and secure and financially sound and making as much income as you possibly can. And there may be some concern around like feelings of insecurity or attachments that you have relied on and maybe have even been using as a crutch to feel secure so that you feel like you're on stable ground and you're able to get through the day to day. But you're being asked to release a lot of that and focus instead on developing more trust of yourself, trust of others, trust of things to work out in your favor, and not always needing to be super in control of things to feel like you don't have to worry about them. So stressing a lot less, especially around matters of comfort, trusting yourself to make good and sound financial decisions. There may even be a spending habit that you've noticed that isn't really serving to improve your quality of life as much as it could be. Also, if there have been matters of dependencies upon you recently that are getting a bit too heavy and that are possibly sapping some of your energy and some of your sense of your own footing underneath you, then this is likely going to be calling that into question as well, and whether someone else can pick up some slack. Uranus in your 10th house is indicating that your career is helping you along these lines. So if it might be that you're coming into a position or an opportunity that is enabling you to feel more financially sound and secure, if it plays out a bit more where it looks on the surface like a bit of a mixed bag, then this could be potentially even like news of cutbacks or something around you that in turn causes you to make some financial cutbacks of things again that aren't serving your quality of life, and then enable you to then feel more secure out of a concern of something that doesn't necessarily need to happen, but the thought of it happening might change some of your financial habits. But ultimately, there's shifts in your career, in your working life, that is serving to help you along the lines of questions of dependencies and security, materialism, things like this, and ultimately serving to feed into that quality of life that sense of trust in yourself and in your life to be satisfying and something that you don't need to continually stress about. You may also find that you have some sort of additional source of income or revenue that winds up arising around this period of time, whether that be your own or someone connected to you that's kind of, again, easing up on the dependencies upon you. And yeah, ultimately, the best way that you can utilize this is to not stress too much about having to be fully in control of things in order to feel like you're secure, but rather relying during this period of time on trust and developing in that. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Leo rising. So for Virgo rising, this eclipse is activating your first house and your seventh house. So this is bringing up a lot of issues around yourself and your identity and how you perceive yourself, how you portray yourself, how you approach others, and then other people, and how you view your relationships, how you do relationships. So you may feel as though you have boxed yourself in with self-criticism. You may feel as though you have fallen into a bit of a rut recently, and that you feel like you are giving more to your relationships than you are receiving from them, or that you feel that you're too dependent on others in some way or another, whether it be to reassure you about certain things or to make judgments for you or to even make decisions for you. Rather, this is calling you to come back to yourself a lot, but to do so in a way that's much less critical than usual and that isn't tied to old structures, old constraints that you have placed upon yourself, especially if you have felt inhibited or you felt like your identity has been a bit shifting in recent times. Like it feels like maybe parts of it are a bit up in the air during this period of time, because you're going to be getting eclipses along these lines for a couple of years. But during this one, Uranus is helping you, and it's up in your ninth house of expanding your horizons, personal development, your spirit, feeding your spirit, whether it be through travel and new experiences that you haven't had before, whether it be through learning, whether it be through spirituality. You're being asked to focus on developing yourself in a very new way in order to feel like you're coming back more to yourself, and that you're coming back to yourself in a very different and much more lighthearted and accepting and compassionate way than you have before. And then it's from that place that you can then address any sort of relationship concerns that you may also have arising in the coming couple of years, which is likely that to an extent they've been less than satisfactory, either too serious or too critical, people demanding too much from you, people offering their input a little bit too much, where it's violating your boundaries to an extent. But yeah, ultimately, this is coming through the ninth house, personal development and expansion of your horizon. So if there is a new interest that seems to arise, a new fascination, maybe a course that you're wanting to take, or a place that you're wanting to go visit, or a culture that you're wanting to experience or study, books that are capturing your attention, activities or hobbies or things like this that seem to be lighting you up a bit, I would go all in on those. I would not stress about what other people think of that. Ultimately, this is about bringing you back to yourself and shedding off any layers of yourself that have been feeling confining recently, whether they be self-imposed or encouraged by others and their judgments. So yeah, big period of time of personal development throughout this time. And again, shedding off things that are no longer serving you. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Virgo. All right, so for Libra rising, this eclipse is activating your 12th house and your 6th house. And the way it's playing out, it might seem like it's kind of working under the radar, like it's a very subtle but deeply felt eclipse. So with the moon in your 12th house, it's working on the area of your subconscious, your patterning, your conditioning, your psyche, and your emotions. Fears can also arise in this place, so it's working on those things, and it's trying to help you to release a lot of potential baggage or difficulties, things that maybe you haven't really worked through quite yet, and maybe we're not even fully aware of. These patterns can definitely go on under the surface, and we can feel like they're normal because we were conditioned to experience those things. So of course it seems normal to us. But the stories that you tell yourself, the way that you imagine the world to be with regard to yourself, the way that you speak to yourself internally, the way that you subconsciously treat yourself. Do you backburner yourself? Are you too perfectionistic or too critical of yourself? Are you too boxed in and feeling like you're not quite able to step out because there's some sort of underlying inhibition that you carry? You're really being asked to work through that and to sort out some of the materials that are going on and to sort out some of what is going on in the subconscious. This could have you connecting to spirituality in a very major way. Also, if you are in therapy, this is super helpful to that end. It's likely to be very, very productive. And speaking of productivity, that may even be something that you're carrying with you subconsciously, is the sense of feeling a need to always be productive and maybe not recognizing that your enjoyment of life and feeling aligned in your life and being able to just go with the flow and do what it is that you are feeling called to do, not what you feel that you ought to do, that is also something that's very important. Now, there's a trine from Uranus in your 8th house, which is helping you with further psychological insights that can be highly transformative for you. So this is probably bringing to your attention things that you kind of weren't totally aware were going on, especially when it comes to you and how you see yourself in the world and in relationships, the value that you place upon yourself. This could also be coming through as someone that you're connected to in like an intimate kind of relationship, someone that you share a lot with, whether it be like financial resources or emotional resources, someone who supports you in that way. They could also be bringing to your attention a pattern that you have that is apparent and might not be the healthiest for you, in order to help you to then work through that and heal that and take better care of yourself then. So this eclipse is really encouraging in you a deep-seated emotional and psychological kind of cleansing and healing, such that you're able to move forward not feeling like you're constantly managing yourself and your relationships, but are able to rather experience your life as it unfolds without feeling the need maybe to control these things or to be super productive or super valuable. You don't need to be a specific type of thing in order to be valuable is basically the message here. So yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Libra rising. So for Scorpio rising, this eclipse is activating your 11th house and your 5th house here. And so it is calling into question some of the connections that you have, also potentially some of the hopes and dreams and goals that you have. You may find around this time that there are certain goals that you set out for yourself that just aren't quite feeling right anymore. They might be feeling a bit dull. They might be feeling a bit unsatisfying or unfulfilling at this point. And so if that's the case, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that these things are coming up for review, and anything that makes you feel really boxed in or isn't expansive for you is likely to be coming under a lot of scrutiny and possibly a need to peel that away. So this can be freeing up space. This is often what happens with eclipses, especially full moon eclipses, is that things are released in order to create space for something that is intending and needing to come into your life, but your life might just be a bit overly full with something else that isn't entirely necessary anymore. So that could be certain connections that you have, certain groups that you belong to, again, certain goals, or even beliefs about what it is that you're able to achieve. Even some inhibitions that you have socially or around your creativity, such that maybe you are a bit too perfectionistic to release, if you're like a creative type, to release things. This would really encourage to set that aside and to really go all in on your creativity and to really go for what it is that you genuinely and authentically want and what it is that you authentically enjoy. You're also really encouraged to express yourself fully and to, again, not cage yourself in, not feel inhibited due to other people. Now, Uranus is helping you out from your 7th house of your close relationships. So there's a lot of social stuff that's going on for you. And you're being helped along these lines with your connections to other people. So there could even be someone pointing out some inhibitions that you may have that you might not even think about and asking you like, hey, why don't you aim higher? Hey, why don't you release this? This is great. You could be meeting some new people that you connect to more, such that certain other relationships are kind of phasing out. And that's kind of along the lines of what I was mentioning of like, sometimes things phase out for us with these lunar eclipses in order for other things to come in. There could be both sides of that in pretty short succession here. But ultimately, you're wanting to experience relationships differently here and experience yourself, feel yourself differently within your relationships. And that's what's being worked on throughout this period of time. So I would definitely expect breakthroughs along these lines. And in particular, with regard to when you envision your life and your connections with other people, what really feels ideal? What really feels aligned? Do you have enough like-minded people around you? Do you have enough encouraging and affirming people around you? And if not, are there some changes that you can make in your relationships? Are there some ways that you can meet some new people and expand your horizons within your relationships in order to get out of what may have felt like a bit of a rut in your relationships recently? But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Scorpio rising. So for Sagittarius rising, this eclipse is activating your 10th house and your 4th house. So these are very important parts of your life. This is speaking to your career, your legacy, your reputation, your public standing, your public life, as well as your home and family, your origin, your core, who it is that you feel like you are deep down inside. So there may have been some ambitions that you had. There may have been a role that you strongly identified with or a field that you pursued for a while that may feel somewhat unsatisfying at this point. And if you've been holding on to these things for fear of letting go and what that would mean, you're definitely encouraged not to box yourself in along these lines and not to be perfectionistic about a kind of linear development of your career and your public standing and your legacy, but rather to be a little bit more flexible with yourself along these lines. I would super not be surprised to have Sagittarius rising experiencing a career or job shift around this time. This could be promotion, this could be switching fields, this could be switching companies, this could be a major turnover in your coworkers or your employees. And the reason that I say that is that Uranus in your 6th house is supporting the changes that are necessary to be made along these lines. And the 6th house is your daily routine, your working life, employees, coworkers, tasks and health and things like that. So if you've been feeling really out of sync with your working life, there's a lot of opportunity around this period of time to make either minor shifts while you're laying the groundwork for bigger changes in the coming couple of years, or to make those big shifts now if there are opportunities available. If you are super dissatisfied, say worst case scenario, if you're super dissatisfied in a role that you have right now, I would look around. You might really be surprised at what's available to you. Even changing your routine of your work or around your working life could help you to feel more satisfied somehow, or to look at your working life differently, such that you're able to make it feel less like you're in a rut and give you different footing, or at least a different energy to be working with while you're making the changes that you're desiring in the coming couple of years along these lines. There may also be something going on with your home or family, whether it be a move or a new addition to your family or a changing relationship within your family, that is kind of encouraging a lot of these other changes in your daily routine, as well as in your career. So often we move for work, or we change our work because we're wanting to move. Those things are likely to feed into each other a lot in the coming years for you because of where the eclipses are going to be taking place. And you may be seeing the outset of that at this point, where you're starting to see, okay, there's going to be changes coming up. And so how can I be flexible in my routine to allow for these changes to take shape? And I also would not be surprised if there's a major work-life balance question coming up for you around this time that is causing you again to change your routine in order to fulfill these different, very important aspects of your life, whether it's a matter of your family or a matter of you being able to have more time for yourself and feel more healthy along those lines, of being more compassionate to yourself rather than continuing to grind, and then feeling very depleted deep down or unsatisfied deep down. So making those shifts, they're available to you right now. So I would highly recommend it, because this is likely to feed into some broader changes that you're being called to make in the coming couple of years as well. But yeah, that is pretty much what I have for you, Sagittarius rising. So for Capricorn rising, this eclipse is activating your 9th house of broadening your horizons of philosophy, spirituality, higher learning, travel, culture, personal development, your interests, things like this, as well as your 3rd house of communication, learning, and the people, places, and things that are around you, including your community, neighborhood, things like this. So there's likely to be major questions coming up around your beliefs and your horizons, and whether you're really stretching yourself, whether you are really challenging yourself to grow and develop personally. You may feel that you are or have been in a bit of a rut recently, and you might be really having urges to break out of that and to experience more joy, more happiness, more spirit in your life. There may be some rigid or perfectionistic aspects of your beliefs or your thought process or your perspective that you're also being asked to let go of. And there's likely a new interest, a hobby, some sort of creative pursuit, possibly even your children and your relationships with your children, possibly even a romantic partner that is helping you to shake this up, to helping you to shake you out of a rut. If you have children, I wouldn't even be shy to like talk to them about that if you feel like you're experiencing something along those lines, because there's a lot of help for you in that area of your life. If you have a romantic partner, hitting them up, talking to them about feeling like you're in a rut and wanting to be more spontaneous and joy driven, wanting to expand and grow and develop and feel like you're really experiencing life. They're likely to have a lot of interesting perspectives and ideas to contribute around how you're able to do that. So you're likely to get a much better response than maybe you would even expect from those people. But on a personal level, this I could totally see playing out as feeling like you are in a bit of a rut, feeling like you've boxed yourself in a bit, feeling like you are not quite reaching your full potential, and therefore recognizing, okay, I need to make a change along these lines. I need to discover something that I truly enjoy doing again. You could wind up returning to a creative interest that you have. You could wind up pursuing a new or renewing an old hobby that you really enjoy. And this could absolutely be along the lines of your own personal expression. Ultimately, again, you're trying to come back to your own spirit. You're trying to reignite a spark for yourself, and you're being really encouraged to. So in terms of spontaneity, interests, hobbies, creative pursuits, self-expression, authenticity, I would be really going all in on this area of your life. It's likely to help even your health a lot and making you to feel more like you're aligned with the unfoldment, the development of your life, to make you feel like you're more in the driver's seat here. And it's likely to shed a lot of new light on the world for you. So brightening up your world, basically. I'm not sure if you've experienced that. That's something I totally experience where if I'm in a rut, like even colors don't seem quite as exciting as when I'm really invigorated and I'm feeling like very fulfilled and connected. And yeah, you're likely to have just really wonderful breakthroughs along these lines of how you see the world, how you share of yourself, how you experience your life throughout this period of time. And yeah, if you have felt at all like you're in a rut, this is such a perfect time to address that. And even if you don't actively, you're probably going to be forced to in some way or another. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Capricorn rising. So for Aquarius rising, this eclipse is activating your 8th house and your 2nd house. So there are some issues and questions around trust and resources, security, values, dependencies, connections with others, and the health of those that are coming up a lot right now. So you may be experiencing or recognizing some concerns around dependency on others or trust of others. This could be something that you have experienced from family, or it could be something that family is helping you to work through around this period of time. There could be some fears or inhibitions around intimacy, around deep connections, and connections that somehow make you feel like they trigger a feeling of insecurity due to the fact of a kind of dependency within that. But ultimately, what you're being asked to do is to trust in yourself, to trust in your own judgment, to trust in your ability to experience transformative connections with other people without being shaken by it. And just because maybe you've had some difficult experiences with people before, that doesn't mean that that is somehow something that you deserve or that's going to be a pattern for you. So trusting your intuition when it comes to other people, trusting your intuition, your compassion to not guide you wrong, especially when it comes to your own self-worth. So that's another way that we can get our footing under us such that we're able to trust other people, because we know that our own sense of self-worth, our own values are secure. And so again, like if someone we encounter turns out to be untrustworthy, it's okay because we've maintained our footing, because we trust in ourselves. And that's where our security lies. So there could be an extent to which you have depended on the validation or assurance of others, where you're being called to not depend on that, to depend on your own certainty of yourself, of your self-worth, of your values, such that then you're able to be open to others and what it is that they bring to the table without constantly then needing to question them and yourself. With Uranus in your fourth house, that's where this kind of potential family tie is lying. There could be some conditioning around that you've experienced that may be a source of some of that fear, and working through that, either with your family or just in yourself, working on your own core emotional state, your emotional foundations, that's likely to shake loose that sense of rigidity that maybe you feel along these lines, or the fears that you may have along these lines. There could also be financial things coming up around this time that is also causing you to feel more secure in yourself. So how you handle money, does it make you feel more secure? Does it contribute to your quality of life, the quality of living that you experience? If not, then maybe some of those spending habits are trying to fill a gap that isn't financial, but might actually be an emotional security thing. So how is it that you can truly utilize your finances, your resources, to make yourself feel truly comfortable, rather than as a kind of stopgap measure to address emotional issues? There may be something that comes up around this time around real estate or leases, property matters that wind up coming up. And when it comes to those, I would ultimately highly recommend trusting your own self and your own intuition. I would not rely on the pressures or the opinions or judgments of others around that. The kinds of contracts and things that you get into, the people that you allow in your home, the energies you allow in your home, this is all truly up to you. And you should deeply trust yourself to make the best decisions for yourself and not depend again on the views and values of others. But yeah, ultimately this is about a deep, deep emotional healing for you around patterns, conditionings, and dependencies with regard to yourself and others. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Aquarius rising. So last but not least, for Pisces rising, this eclipse is activating your seventh house of relationships, partnerships, and other people, as well as your first house of yourself and your sense of self, how you portray yourself and how you perceive of yourself. So there's something here about your relationship patterns that you're releasing around this period of time. It could be that you depend on others to offer judgments for you, so to possibly even to make decisions for you. You may be connected to some people who are a bit critical or perfectionistic when it comes to you. You may find even that you're a bit codependent with people like this. And there could be, again, some patterns around relationships like that you're starting to recognize. And possibly through a sort of communication that you experience either that you receive, or maybe it's a friend giving you some advice about how you experience relationships that maybe they feel like you deserve better, that is helping you to recognize that pattern and address it then. Your experiences with the environment, the people, places, and things around you, your neighborhood, your community, and the way that you interact with this and engage with this, it's calling into question some of your closer relationships. And it's doing so in a very healthy way. Ultimately, this is to ensure that your relationships are on equal and solid footing, and that there's not too much, again, codependency or criticism or inhibition or perfectionism within those relationships, and to make them much more healthy then going forward. So around this time, I would really recommend being super compassionate, especially to yourself, but also to others, and to trust your gut when it comes to people, to trust your instincts when it comes to people. If something feels a bit off, or if you're feeling really out of sync with someone, sometimes with full moons, especially eclipses, lunar eclipses, this can call on us to release in the 7th house a specific relationship. So you may find that you're wrapping up some relationships that just don't feel right anymore or aren't really satisfying anymore. And ultimately, this is to bring you, again, back to yourself and to make yourself feel like you're able to be more authentic in your own identity, in your own self-expression. And maybe you've changed, and that's perfectly fine. When you change, sometimes your connections, your relationships need to change. So there could be a sudden change in your communication with others. You may be learning something new about relationships that's also calling some of those into question, or learning something about your own identity, your own psyche, confidence, things like this. Maybe there's like a self-development or personal growth kind of thing that you're learning about right now that you're really wanting to put into practice in your life. Or you could just be running into people that are becoming new friends. And so maybe you're feeling a bit less dependent on people that you once strongly identified with or once strongly resonated with, but maybe not so much anymore. Maybe you're getting out and about more, and you are running into people that just are more kind of exciting for you right now. And so you're wanting to spend your time developing those relationships around this period of time. But yeah, ultimately what this speaks to is in the coming couple of years, you're going to be experiencing major shifts in how you see yourself and how you do relationships, how you experience your connections with other people. And we're getting the ball rolling here with major changes and shifts within your environment. So that's ultimately going to be contributing to kicking this off. Likely your connections with other people will be pretty unrecognizable a couple of years from now, but it really all starts around this period of time. So yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Pisces rising. And that is what I have for everyone. So I hope that this video was helpful to everyone. Thank you so much to everyone for being here. And thank you especially to our members, Angel Niblock, Patrick McKenney, Startlingly True, Deborah Keel-Levitt, Gary A., Stacy Bergener, Maria Serralhiro, Michelle Howell, JJ, Jody Z, C. Rezer, Anne-Marie, Lynn Newman, and Peace Out. Thank you so much for your support. Much love to you. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful eclipse. And I will see you all soon. Be good. Bye.